I don't think there's too much team news to go through, but will you have Jimmy Kindhorst back for this one after his ankle injury?
So probably look at another week for Jimmy. He just hasn't settled properly, but other than that, we're all pretty good.
I mean, throughout the season, you've had to deal with a lot of injury problems. How are you feeling now that you've got barely any at all to think about going into this game?
Yeah, try not to think about it. To be honest, it's a good position to be in. As I said last week, it's a tough position to be in because you've got players missing out that could easily be in the team. Comes down to an opinion or just in terms of the structure of the side. If injuries happen, that type of thing. So Jez Litton's a perfect example of that. He's played majority of the year, Jez, and played extremely well. But it's just having someone that can genuinely go in and play halves. If like Jack Walker on the weekend sort of struggled a little bit at one stage there, and then you'd move Mikey to fullback, and then you're putting Jordan straight into the half. So you need to work all that out when you're doing your bench. So as much as it's a good headache to have, you obviously feel for certain players as well.
I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on assembling a team for this game, given you have booked your place in the playoffs, but there still is potentially fourth up for grabs? Are we possibly looking at a similar situation where Jez and Matty will have to sit out again?
Oh, we'll look at the team at the back end of the week, but we've got to. Most of the guys from last week got through the game okay, and then what we'll need to do again is just have a look at the dynamics and have a look at the bench and just work out some scenarios. So that's what we do most weeks, but especially now because we've had we weren't able to do that as such because we had so many injuries. So pretty much I wanted to get you're playing your two hookers, and it's all about I wanted to keep developing Jez because he's going to be our long-term 9. But now it's, as I say, it's around working out the best balance for our bench.
I suppose your other conundrum is wanting to give players minutes as well ahead of the playoffs. How tempted are you to perhaps give Jordan Abdul a start, and where is Jesse Sue at as well with getting minutes into his legs? Yeah,
look, Jordan's one where Jordan would have kept playing the whole game last week if he could. There was a message that we got, so I spoke to him about that today. If he played, he would have played 50 minutes or so in the middle. That's a lot of time. Like, there's no way Jordan could play 80 minutes in the middle of 13. Elliot Minchella's only worked towards doing that all season. So to be able to play, have Jordan come off the bench and play, whether it's 50 or 30 or whatever it may be, it's difficult to do that in the middle. But there's no doubt he'll be better for the 2 runs that he's had. And if it means coming on in that first half or whether he starts, I think I like the balance that we've got at the moment.
That message that Jordan Abdul got, was that relating to game management and his fitness?
No, it was just checking on him. It was just basically seeing how he was, and he probably gave an answer there where he might hold on to next time to say, I'll get through another couple of sets and then play it a little bit more. It was more getting feedback from him on where he was at. So he'll, if Jordan's on the field, we want him to stay on the field.
And what about Jesse Sue as well? Got minutes in the game on Saturday night. How's he feeling?
Yeah, not too bad. He's still, obviously working towards getting back to fitness. We just trained then. It's not, he's not at 100% in terms of where he's at. Yes, the injury's okay, but it'll take a little bit of time. So, again, we'll just play Jess to where he can get to in the game and then take him off when we need to take him off. But I was happy, just to give him that short spell before halftime and short spell afterwards, and he'll only be better for it.
Before we look ahead to this game coming up then on Friday night, the end of season awards this evening, I know you won't want to single out anyone as a head coach, but who have been your real leading figures throughout this campaign in the dressing room?
I think I've got to single them out now, don't I? Look, I mean, our captain's been, for the last 4 years, inspirational in terms of what he's done week in, week out. The person that I want to give special mention, but there's no doubt, is Elliot Minchella. The reason being is, he was dropped after round 2. There was a few things in that game that we said that he needed to work on, and what he did, he took it on the chin and just worked extremely hard to the point where, I'd leave him in. He stays out in the field as long as he can, and he's a really, really important part of our team. Naturally, players take feedback and improvement areas they can take it in different ways, but many took it the way it needed to be taken and just worked extremely hard in his game. He's a leader of our club, so he's one that I want to single out. There's been a lot this year that we can mention, but those two certainly are two that stand out. I think you got to mention Ryan Hall as well, who just keeps going, doesn't he? I mean, look what he did again last weekend. And then the other one's Mikey Lewis. I think Mikey's progressing into, maturing, should I say, into a young man more and more every day. The way he comes in, the way he presents himself or speaks in team meetings, and little areas of his game. I'm sure he's a competitor. He's always going to go near the line, but we're just going to make sure that he stays under that. And a little example of his maturity was he didn't get the ball off the kickoff, but he got out of that pretty quickly and just worked towards his next job and did that. And he's been one for me that's been a standout as well.
You mentioned Ryan Hall earlier, and he's one of those who's really bought into what you've been trying to sell to this group in terms of the mentality set after the game. Just because we're in the playoffs doesn't mean that we've achieved anything yet. How pleased are you that mentality is continued, particularly following the Challenge Cup final defeat as well?
Yeah, I'm blessed to have the leaders that I have in the club. There's no doubt about that, and Ryan Hall is one of those. Hawley's one, as I said before. Players these days take feedback a little different to back in the day, where Hawley probably started in that era where it was a lot more direct and you were singled out in team meetings a lot more. So what he's got, he still has that old school way about him where he's pretty direct in what he says, but he's never ever wrong in terms of the feedback that he gives. You only had to listen to his post-match interview to realise he knows the game. He's a leader, speaks very well. For me, when Hawley talks, you let him talk because what he says is spot on. He'll always go to the work on areas, which a lot of players these days will want to go to the feel good stuff or the positive. That's just society these days, and you adapt. But you need to have the Ryan Halls in your team just to bring things back a little bit and just keep it real.
Looking ahead to this game against Wakefield, how are you feeling that there is slightly less riding on it from their perspective, that they've already gone down, they've not got as much to play for, I suppose? How much does that change this game? Oh,
it doesn't change at all. I mean, I do say it most weeks, but this is another opportunity, I think, to show how far we've come in terms of sticking to what works. Like, we could go to Wakefield and try and chase points of being in this top 4 team and then come up with errors and then we'll get beat on the scoreboard if that happens, there's no doubt. Or we can go there and then we build a game again and we work towards everything that we've been working on, which has been playing a whole KR style, and we're comfortable with that. So we need to have the discipline to go over there and do that again. Wakefield's going to come out. They'll throw a lot at us. There's no doubt they'll want to finish on a high. I think Mash has done a great job, even though they're going down. Like he's had it hard this year in terms of some resources and the amount of staff that he's had there. But he's done the best he can, and he'll get them up again this week. There's no doubt about that.
What are you expecting from them in terms of team selection, as they've got a couple of players suspended, and there may be as well an eye on preparing for next year with the players that he's got for the championship?
Yeah, it'd be an interesting one to see. The answers I'm not too sure. He's obviously got a squad there that he'd go to his next sort of couple of props. Does he go to more experience, or does he go to the future? That's one that we'll wait and see, and we'll know more obviously on game day.
Will you have an eye on the league game, or will you be ignoring it?
No, definitely not. We'll be ignoring it. It's this is our next job. As I said, for coaches included, it's really, really important that we focus on Friday. Our next job's playing Wakefield, and there's an opportunity to play back at home. Mathematically we can still achieve that. So there's no doubt that we want to achieve that. But so again, Friday is the most important game, because if we don't focus on beating Wakefield on Friday, then we're going away to Leigh, which is, we'll worry about the week after, but we certainly would love to play in front of our home fans again. And as I said before, it's an important game for us to to show how far we've come in terms of our maturity and discipline, and we'll see where that's at on Friday.
You're ignoring it, but how do you avoid the players from being distracted by it or chasing the game perhaps if they get an inkling of what's happening at Leigh?
Well, firstly, I'd say that we've got a very, very competitive squad. What you said before was, the amount of players we've got to choose from. So they're playing for positions. Yeah, that's the reality. We're going there on Friday to put in a good performance so we can build for the finals. This time of the year is all about momentum, and we've certainly got a bit at the moment, and we need to keep that. So individuals, what they can control is their own job and how they prepare for the game. We're big on that. We're massive on being consistent with our preparation. So if we want to sway away from that, then it's going to hurt certain individuals when we've got to select a team the week after. So there's a whole lot to play for on Friday. And regardless if we had a top 4 opportunity home game or not, you're still going there. We've had some issues playing Wakefield away. We spoke about it at Tenerife in the past, and that was something that we wanted to move on from and grow as a team. So we've achieved that once this year, and we've got an opportunity to do it again. So that'll tell us how far we've come and the growth in the group is if we can go do the job against Wakefield again, which I don't think we've done for a while, twice in a year away from home.
Just finally on Leigh, how much of a psychological advantage would it give you to edge ahead of them in the table if results go your way, and then as well to have them at home, particularly given the last victory that you had against them in Super League?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't matter where. I'm sure they'd be the same. For us, we'd love to play at home, but if we're playing at Leigh the week after, game on. It's an opportunity to win a finals game. So as much as they'd want to be playing at home and we want to be playing at home, of course both teams would want to do that. But I don't think psychologically or whatever, again, it'll come back to how you prepare and what your plan is around beating them that week. That'll be the most important thing.
You touched on the difficulty that the side has had with playing Wakefield in previous seasons. 14 points was the difference when you last met. Given points could be a huge factor on Friday night, how do you widen that margin?
I think it's one of those where you don't want to be looking at the score in terms of what you got to get to. I've been around rugby league enough now to know playing and coaching. If you do that and you try and chase points, then it comes unstuck. So what's got us to we played Leigh and we scored a lot of points. Hull FC, a couple of games there. One of the games against Wakefield where we scored a few points. We built the game early, and that's important that we do that again. We need to build the game early again, and we'll see what happens off the back of that. But if we go out and try and chase points, we'll be in for some problems.
And given you talked about Wakefield in Tenerife before the start of the season, has it been easy this week as a result to guard against complacency, given you've already beaten them twice during the campaign?
I'd like to think, we've got a lot to play for, and I'd like to think that we've come a long way, from our pre-season camp and where we're at then to where we are now. We've got an opportunity, as I said, to be able to go beat Wakefield away. I'm not sure the stat. I'm not sure when we've done it last, but I know there's been an issue there in the past by when we go there. It's a tough ground to play, and they were all the sort of comments that I'd heard. But again, when you get your own game right and your identity and what works and what doesn't, then opposition doesn't matter as much. Respect, yeah, of course, we'll respect Wakefield, and there's no doubt that you only have to look at their past performances. They're narrowly getting beaten. So if we're not up, they can do the same to us. So we'll just work on what we can.
Just finally, of course, last home game again, I suppose, is up for grabs for the likes of Sean Kennydale and many others in the squad. How much will that form part of the team talk and motivating the players for this one?
Oh, look, what we did was we celebrated Skids and everyone, obviously, after the last game. And there's no doubt in the world, guys like Skids and the players that are leaving the club would want to play here again and have one last game here. But it's not about, as I said, we're not looking at, yes, we want to be playing at home, but it's not about throwing everything into getting a home semi-final, because if you do that, I know it can be cliche, but you forget about process, you forget about what works, what's worked in the past for the last 3 games, and It will come unstuck for us. So we know the end result. It's like last week. We knew the end result of making a semi-final if we won that game, but we weren't. That wasn't our motive. It wasn't around, if we win this, we win the semis. We need to do this to get in the semis, or that happens if we win the and when we'll get in the semis. It was mainly around breaking the game down of what works for us consistently and sticking to that.
Thanks for your time, Willie.
Cheers. Thanks, Ollie.
Hello, Willie. All right, pal?
Hey, Joe. Good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, just a few from me. I just thought I'd mention Elliot Minchella and James Batcher. Obviously, one eye away from OKR. England have got this test series in a few weeks, and I know they weren't included in this original 40-man squad, but do you think they've been quite unlucky to do that? Because it looks like Sean Wayne's just going to pick from that pool, and he did it about 5 months ago. But them two have been definitely worthy of honours this year, haven't they? I think they've been brilliant.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm not sure whether it's just that 40, but if it is, then, Sean's got to obviously have a look at. Hopefully, we go deep into the finals, and if those two guys are playing well, then certainly have a look at it because, as you know, I can't speak highly enough of those guys. They're everything what KR's about, and that's why they get picked every week. I made it pretty clear to the players at the start of the year of how to get in this team and, what traits and values you need to get in this team. And those guys have lived that each week. So, when you're picking a team, it's pretty easy to put those guys in. And there's a process around that. I've got, 3 other coaches that help select a side. But it's pretty easy to pick those guys for the values that they display each week.
2 players he did mention last week at his press conferences, of course, Mikey and Jezza were in the sides. I know the 24's not confirmed yet, but for a club, and Jordan's in there as well, of course, that would just prove where this team's probably going to have 2 local lads, maybe 3 in the England setup. That'll be a huge achievement, and I know as a coach you'll be proud as punch if that happens. Yeah,
absolutely I would. For any of those guys, I'd love to see, obviously, Jez and Mike in there. Jez is one that, although he wasn't in the team last week, purely it's, as I said, it was around the balance of the team. But him or Matty, as I said, from day one could start in that 9, and I'm comfortable either way. And I'm sure Sean Wayne sees it that, and we'll look at what Jez has done all season. And I think Mikey's, just getting better and better now. He's maturing more as a player. So there's no doubt he'll add to that team, and whether it was a bench spot as well to come on and break a game up, he could definitely do that too. So it's something for Sean and his staff to think about, but it'd certainly be nice for us as a club. We'd be very proud to have anyone representing England.
And final one from me, mate. Obviously, I know everyone speaks about the players we've already mentioned and the big game players, but I just thought I'd take a bit of time to mention Sam Luckley. I think in the past few weeks, especially when the pack's been under the cosh, he comes on and really ups the ante in that offload game. There was a little bit scrappy at the start of the year. He seems to have cleaned that up as well. I put him as probably my underrated signing of the year. You must be really impressed with him because it wasn't a transfer that got tongues wagging, but it really is now, isn't it? Because he's proven his worth.
Absolutely, Joe. I think, mate, at the start of the year, and I said it to him, he didn't get picked in the Wigan game, and then he's played pretty much every game since then. He came back after the World Cup, and I don't believe he was at his peak fitness, or when I say he wouldn't have been at his peak fitness, but he wasn't where he needed to be. So he started the group. The group trained extremely hard, as you know. So I think he started behind them, and then took a bit of time to catch up in terms of his fitness. Once he got the groove, of his match fitness, then he showed what he's capable of doing. And what I am excited for with Sam is there's so much more in him. I don't even think he realises it. And there's no doubt a strong pre-season will certainly help him, and he'll be better for it again next year because he has been, excellent for us this year, and that's why he's kept his position. But there's no doubt, like you said, that he had that slower start because he wasn't where he needed to be from the pre-season. So obviously, finish the year on a high this year and then have a little break and then go hard in the pre-season. We'll see a better Sam Luckley next year, and he's going into his sort of peak years for a prop. So as I said before, I don't think he realises, sort of how far he can get to once he does, and once he applies himself in the pre-season, then I think we're going to have a very good prop.
Perfect. Thanks, mate. Best of luck Friday.
Cheers, Joe.